Good morning. How is everyone doing today?
Very well.
So my name is Kelvin Henry. I'm a reporter at NBC Universal, and I'll begin by opening it up to introductions to everyone on stage.
My name is Toby Rice. I'm the president and CEO of EQT. If you haven't heard of EQT, we are America's leading natural gas producer, producing a little bit over 8 BCF a day of natural gas. 14 BCF a day goes through our pipelines. If you're not familiar with those numbers, make those relevant. It's a little bit over 1 million barrels a day of energy is flowing through our system. Every day, our 1,500 employees and 28,000 contractors are thinking about one thing: how we can make the energy we produce more affordable, more reliable, and cleaner. And we're really excited about being here and talking about the exciting future for natural gas.
I am not Kyle Kuntz. I am Sam Kenizer. I'm actually Kyle's chief of staff. He wasn't able to make it today, but I'm very honored to be with you guys. BPX Energy is BP's U.S. onshore business. We've been around a long time, made a transformational acquisition in 2018 for BHP's assets in Texas and Louisiana. So we operate in the Eagle Ford, Permian, and Haynesville. So a pretty nice resource mix, a little bit smaller than my peers on the stage. We're now at a little over 500 MBOED per day across the 3 basins. But we've got a premier management team. We are leaning heavily into technology, which I'm hoping to talk a little bit about today. And we've got great assets, as I mentioned. So we're honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm Tom Jordan, CEO of Coterra Energy. We're based in Houston, and we produce oil out of the Permian Basin. And then we're also in the Anadarko Basin of Oklahoma and the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania. In fact, for those of you that have followed the story of the Constitution Pipeline, that actually originates on our property in northeast Pennsylvania and goes into New England, theoretically. I'm a geophysicist by background, so I came into the industry from more of a theoretical, technical background. But really looking forward to a lively discussion on energy here this morning.
All right, so let's begin with that lively discussion. So a lot has happened in the last year, of course. President Trump was reelected, and H.R. 1, which is also known as the Big Beautiful Bill, was passed. Now, energy dominance and expansion are the new mantras. How are changes, in national policies and regulations influencing your forecasts for gas demand?
Joey?
Sure, I'll start. I think what you're seeing with this administration is probably a swing back towards the prioritizing the reliability and affordability of the energy systems that we develop. And man, it couldn't come at a better time, because we're producing record amounts of energy in this country. People need to know that. We've never produced more energy than we are right now. Yet despite that, Americans' energy bills are up 35%. That's a big catalyst for people scratching their heads. How can that happen? It's because political forces overwhelmed market forces and kept, the most cost-effective, reliable, cleanest energy from getting to the marketplace. And we're dealing with these issues like high energy bills despite record production. Why this matters, and we get a question a lot, is what the heck is actual energy dominance means? I'll tell you what it means to me. Energy dominance means our tech companies can run full speed to win this AI race. Energy dominance means our allies have their energy security covered with our LNG. And energy dominance means Americans' energy bills go down. When we look at the 3 major themes for energy, we're talking about natural gas. We're going to see the continued evolution of our energy systems. That's replacing coal with natural gas. This is the driver behind why the United States is the world leader in lowering global emissions. We hope to see that continue. Then we talk about power demand and meeting this AI rush that's taking place. That's a 10 to 18 BCF a day of natural gas increase. This is up. Just think about it as a 100 BCF a day market for natural gas. Only 40% of that is AI. Okay, so this is not all the eggs in the AI basket. And then from an energy security perspective, we're seeing LNG export markets are going to double, add another 15 BCF a day. It's all happening over the next few years, by the end of the decade. So when you step back and you add it up, we're looking at a 20 to 40% increase in natural gas demand. And that's going to allow us to be energy dominant, but it's going to require a tremendous amount of infrastructure. And I think one thing that's very clear, if people know, the people on the stage and the companies that are doing this, we have the resource and capabilities to do this. We just need to have a regulatory environment that lets the most cost-effective, most reliable, cleanest energy make its way to the marketplace.
Yeah, I think Toby said it really well. Maybe a layer I would add is, we saw, I think because of the last decade of regulatory uncertainty, a lot of shift from federal acreage to fee surface or state, right? So for us, when we acquired BHP and then divested our legacy assets, we got rid of a lot of the regulatory challenges, right? Because we were able to execute our leases with private stakeholders. And so what I'm kind of interested to watch to see is if, some of these policy shifts as the landscape settles, what that's going to mean for some of the western states and some of the basins that maybe capital shifted away from because of the regulatory environment. I'm excited to see some of that capital flow back in.
Yeah, we've had a massive shift in public policy as a consequence of the election. And, I look at it kind of simple-mindedly. A measure of public policy should be, does it address effectively the problem it's trying to address? And we should have a conversation about that, particularly about energy, because the foundation of our economy globally is energy. But we've had a public policy based on ideology. I said in my intro, I'm a scientist. Somebody walks into my office and says, I believe in this solution, and then backs that belief up with a policy. It's a really short meeting. That's a recipe for disaster. And that's kind of been driving our energy policy really globally. And regardless of how you feel about climate change, it's a real challenge. What we've done over the last 50 years is not working. If you look at global emissions, in spite of the trillions of dollars we have invested, they continue to rise. Coal production is at an all-time high, and it continues to rise. And the market is, you asked, what's our forecast for demand? Demand will be there for our products. It's the supply side that needs good public policy. But, quite frankly, I'm concerned about the degree to which we can have a rational discussion about solving the problem. And the answer is not get 51% of the vote and institute 100% of your policies. The answer is let's sit down and have a rational discussion, but let's make it about the problem and not about ideology. And so, I welcome the changing conversation in the United States and around the world, but I am concerned about, President Ocasio-Cortez might have a different viewpoint.
So actually a follow-up question for you, Tom, is what strategies are you using to navigate these changes?
Well, engagement. I think, you see governments frustrated by high energy prices. You see certain states frustrated that they can't compete for data centers because their electricity prices are so high. And so engaging and helping them understand that that is a consequence of their own bad policies is, I think, a way to attack this problem. And we're chipping away at it. I think, look at here in California. I mean, suddenly California is allowing drilling and talking about investing in refineries because, California is a poster child of bad public policy. And so I think engaging on a fact-based discussion is a way to address these issues. And hopefully, if you have honest counterparties, we can make progress.
For you as well.
I agree with Tom. The education, I think where industry can really be helpful is giving people the holistic perspective. Because quite frankly, energy, I feel like the energy industry has done too good of a job with energy. It's been too affordable, it's been too reliable, and as a result, people take it for granted and really don't understand the ripple effects of some of the decisions that are being made. One of the things that we're trying to do is actually understand some of the goals that we have and provide solutions for those goals. I think the work we've done on the U.S. LNG opportunity that we have as the biggest green initiative on the planet. If you care about climate, you should care about foreign coal, which is the biggest source of emissions on the planet. And the biggest heavyweight solution we have to address the biggest source of emissions is using natural gas to replace coal. It's what we did in the United States. It's the reason why we're the world leader in lowering emissions. We've had those conversations, and unfortunately, is an example of just like how difficult the space has gotten in DC. Despite putting out these massive campaigns, that ended up in an LNG ban. What do you do with that? What are really the goals? I think people are taking a step back now and they are reassessing the plans, because one of the things I've heard a lot of these policies was well, we just need to invest more. We've got the solutions. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make. Solar and wind are great in certain applications. They are not every solution. And to the people that say we just need to be doing more, when I was in Davos this past year, like, what are people's goals and success? I was listening to the head of EU, and she was explaining the energy transition was challenged, but there's a lot of things to get excited about. And the stat that she cited as what she was excited about, the win for the energy transition, was the fact that for every dollar we spend on hydrocarbons, we're spending $2 on renewables. Like, I'm sorry, but the amount of dollars we spend more on renewables versus fossil is completely irrelevant stat. I didn't think it was about how much money we spent on renewables, which, by the way, over $2 trillion spent on renewables in this last year as a globe. And for perspective, how much money we invested in fossil, the amount of the energy solution that provides over 80% of the world's energy was $1.3 trillion. So when you're spending 50% more on these solutions, and we're still having these issues like rising energy bills, it's hard for us to hear the argument we should be doing more on that. So I think these type of catalysts that are hitting on the costs are going to force people to reevaluate everything and come back to a more common sense, practical solution. And we just need to be able there to address people's concerns about, I think we've got reliability and affordability covered when we're talking about natural gas. From an environmental perspective, methane emissions is the biggest environmental concern. We've taken that head on, and we're addressing that very aggressively. But the conversations need to keep happening, and there is a bigger opportunity. And what gives me excited, and I'll close with this, people need to get more educated on energy, and I believe that people are only going to get more educated about energy, and I think they'll see the world shift more towards embracing some of these common sense, practical, best solutions that we have.
So let's speak about data centers and onshoring. So with the focus on data centers and onshoring of manufacturing, can U.S. oil and gas producers meet the growing demand for natural gas in the power generation and with increased LNG exports? I'll address that to you, Toby, first.
Sure. So let's frame up what our opportunity is. This is going to be a big question. Because exports is such a big thing with the natural gas markets, people are going to ask the questions, are we exporting all of our resource? Are we going to have enough for ourselves? So we actually did a lot of work quantifying the amount of resource that we have in the United States to be able to meet the growing LNG exports and also meet this growing natural gas demand for power generation. Keep in mind, 20 years ago, we were in a situation as a country where we were questioning, do we have enough resource? And guess what? Those concerns were real. 20 years ago, we were on depleted conventional resources, and we were importing a ton of energy from OPEC. It was one of the greatest transfer of wealth that's happened in history, and people were concerned. And what happened that fixed this is we cracked the code on shale and transformed America from being energy dependent to being an energy powerhouse on the world stage. That's what the shale revolution did. And that shale revolution is just starting to bear fruit. I think it's important for everybody to understand, in this shale revolution that's taking place over the last 15 years, majority of the development has been focused on oil. 20% of our rigs are focused on natural gas. So we've discovered a tremendous amount of resource that has not yet been harvested. When we step back and look at how much resource potential there is, putting two constraints on the inventory that we've discovered but not yet drilled. It's got to be affordable. These wells have got to make sense for us to develop them at a $4 natural gas price. How affordable is that? That's the equivalent of $24 oil, okay? So only inventory works with a $4 gas price. And then the second constraint was we can only grow our resource, our production levels to a place where we have enough inventory remaining where we can hold that production level flat for the next 30 years. That's the reliability piece. When you put those constraints on what we've done in the US, we can grow our production levels in incremental 45 BCF a day from where they're at today and have a surplus of 60 BCF a day of natural gas. 15 of that is already going towards exports. 60 BCF a day of natural gas surplus, whether it's for exports or power demand, that's the energy equivalent of adding 10 million barrels a day of clean energy to the world stage. And just think about that. We have the potential to add a Saudi Arabia of energy. This is going to be a tremendous decarbonizing force. It's going to be a tremendous energy security blanket for our allies. And it's going to enable the AI revolution. The question is whether we're going to be able to meet this. So We have the resource. It's going to come down to, can we get the infrastructure built to make this happen? And that's been the biggest challenge over the last, call it 10 years.
Sam.
Yeah, Toby said it well. I mean, all three of us here operate in globally prolific basins. The resource base is there. Strategically, I think what the operating community is focused on now is driving efficiencies in how we do it so we can meet that demand when hopefully we resolve the infrastructure issues. We're bringing on, in the Haynesville, our company is 65 MCFD wells, which is pushing in some ways the physical limits of these IP rates that we can bring on. So I say that just to underscore sort of Toby's point about how large this resource opportunity is.
It's a 10,000 barrel a day energy well, just for perspective.
Yeah. So tremendous opportunity. And I'm probably going to be a bit of a broken record on this, but leaning into technology, we're already the global leader in developing onshore assets. We think of it as a U.S. onshore sort of opportunity, but that also makes us kind of the world's leader in developing this resource. And that resource exists elsewhere. So we've got a lot of IP and technical expertise that we're going to continue to grow in this space and hopefully lead in this space. And I think that'll have implications for some of the geopolitics that we can forecast, but probably don't have visibility to right now.
Yeah, to that I'd add, if we can just get out of our own way and build infrastructure. The problem is in the United States, we have these isolated markets where you have production and they're not interconnected with pipelines. And when you have a bottleneck, you get price disconnects, and that can lead to lower investment. For example, in the Permian Basin, that's a major gas producing basin, this morning, the price of natural gas is negative $1.50. We have to pay somebody $1.50 per 1,000 cubic feet to take our gas. It's ridiculous. And it's only there because there's not sufficient pipelines and you get crowds wanting to get out. And so there's plenty of natural gas in the United States. As we go deeper and deeper, we're going to bring more natural gas onto market. If there's a sucker bet over the last 250 years, it's bet against technology. That's been a sucker bet every step along the way, and it'll be a sucker bet today. But we need infrastructure. We need free markets to function, and we need the ability for price signals to send supply and demand that will allow us to operate at maximum efficiency. It's a simple principle that was discovered hundreds of years ago. Let's let it work.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and just for everybody to appreciate the technological revolution that's taking place in shale, to Tom's point. Just so you guys understand, because we want to make sure we're building energy systems that are based on innovation and based on technology. Let me tell you what we've done in the shale revolution. My first well that I drilled was 2,000 horizontal feet, and we got stopped before we could, the whole collapse before we could even finish it. It took us 45 days to drill. You're going to see on social media either today or tomorrow a recent drilling record we set a couple days ago. We drilled 12,800 feet in 24 hours. When you step back and you look at the productivity per rig, so how many rigs do we need to hold per unit of production? We've seen a 25-fold increase in the rig efficiency. 25-fold increase. I'll put that up against any energy development system. That's the innovation that we have. And to understand like the pace at which we can move, we went from energy dependent to energy independent in a very short period of time, less than 10 years. That is incredibly impactful. From an energy security perspective, we weren't exporting any LNG 8 years ago. And since 2016, since we started exporting LNG, in that period of time, we've become the world leader in energy exports. From a power situation, the last 10 years, we've added 14 BCF a day of natural gas power generation. What do we need to do to meet this power demand surge between 10 and 18 BCF a day? So in a situation where this industry can operate efficiently, you're going to see massive innovation gains. You're going to see us move at the scale that can carry entire industrialized countries. But it's not going to happen if we get pinched back.
Let me add to that. Yesterday, you saw an announcement, in fact, in the president's own way of putting things. He said yesterday was one of the greatest moments of human civilization. you know.
Tell us why, Tom. Tell
Well,
us why.
you know, he brought together a lot of leaders in the Middle East, and that all of them, you know, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Pakistan, Indonesia, largest Muslim company in the world, and the list went on, to come up with an agreement in principle on getting this mess in Gaza addressed. Do you know what that was fundamentally about? That was about energy. Because 20 years ago, the United States was held hostage to energy. Our foreign policy was held hostage. Our defense was held hostage. Our economy was held hostage because our production domestically peaked around 1970. It went on a long, slow decline, and we were never going to be independent from an energy standpoint. We were written off as dead as an industry. And so it colored our engagement in foreign wars. It colored our foreign policy. We were stalemated and held hostage. And then something remarkable happened, and it happened here in the United States, where one company tried completing in a different type of rock called shale, and then they failed, and another company tried, and another company tried. And next thing you knew, you had the power of ingenuity in American engineering, unlocking a technical attempt to extract hydrocarbons heretofore unknown. And in a period of a very few years, we went from written off for dead to be the largest oil and natural gas producer in the world. And today we sit here with the largest economy in the world, the largest energy security in the world, and the lowest price for energy in the world. There's never been a nation in history in a position like that. And you know the thing I love about it? It didn't happen in government, halls of government. It didn't happen in major oil companies. It happened in scrappy little companies like ours that just got up every morning trying to figure it out and survive. It's a story of free markets and American ingenuity. And yesterday's announcement would not have happened if the President of the United States was worried about energy security. And so, you know, I think, you know, we can talk about energy dominance, we can throw all these buzzwords at it, but we are the envy of the world, and we should not surrender that.
So maybe just to give a little context, because I'm guessing there's some students in the room, some folks who aren't intimately familiar. There's a few things to think about when we're talking about this transformation. Toby mentioned a couple of them, lateral length and how fast we're able to do that. So call that drilling cycle times, right? So we're drilling longer horizontal well bores, much faster than we ever have before. We're able to complete those in more efficient ways than we ever have before. There's a lot of talk, you know, a decade ago about fracking and how we frack. We do that now so efficiently. We're doing it multiple times. The fleets are getting bigger. They're getting more efficient. They're running on electricity. We have our own grid infrastructure systems that those frack fleets can rely on. And letter wells, you're going to start hearing about letter wells, but we're able to capture the resource more efficiently by navigating around our footprints. So you can do J's, you can do U's. And so we're actually getting more and more resource, more and more efficiently, much faster. So just to help the context a little bit there.
Now, speaking about that, of course, everyone's heard about artificial intelligence. Now, if you could tell us, recently, actually, there was an energy finance leader that recently told oil and gas operators to embrace AI or go out of business. Now, what are you doing to embrace AI every day?
Number one, I'd say like the external factors on our business. I mean, AI is a huge catalyst for energy demand. As I mentioned, that 10 to 18 BCF a day of growth coming for power demand. About 4 to 6 BCF a day is going to be specifically designed to power the AI revolution that's taking place. Our company, our job in this whole thing is to make sure our tech customers can run full throttle. And there's a million things they need to worry about when it comes to deploying these massive data centers. Hopefully energy should not be one of them. And that's where we're going to fit in and take care of that. Our company, EQT, we announced just in the last couple months that we're going to be supplying natural gas to over about 1.5 BCF a day of natural gas to make that relevant. When converted to power, that will be enough natural gas to power almost 2 New York cities. Like, these are massive scale type opportunities. And we step back and you look at what we need to do on the power gen side just for AI. We need to build electric infrastructure equivalent to adding 10 to 15 New York cities in this country. I mean, that's the scale of this thing. So we need to step up and make sure that that energy is available for them so that we can win this race. I'll just, one point on just the urgency for this. You know, people, I think the AI revolution, the person that's going to win this race, this is going to come down to who can build the power infrastructure the fastest. That's going to be the determining factor. It's not going to be about chips, not going to be about how fast we build the actual data centers, about how fast can we build the power. How are we doing in that race? In the US, in the last 24 months, we added about 6 gigawatts of reliable energy. And 2 gigawatts of that was a nuclear facility that started in 2013. So it's not really exactly fast, but 6 gigawatts. For perspective, China, in just the last year, added almost 60 gigawatts of power gen. Their grid is twice as large as ours, and they're building twice as fast. This is probably, as excited as I get about AI and what it's going to do for our companies and the efficiencies and all that, I am most concerned about what happens if we do not win this AI race, and we need to be moving on another level of urgency. We saw what happened when the bombs dropped in Ukraine, and we saw how impactful energy security can be. I think winning this AI race, the stakes have been raised. So I hope that we can really focus on being able to support that.
Well, do you believe that we can step up that urgency quickly?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you look at our track record. I mean, the things that we're talking about here, I mean, going from energy dependent to being an energy powerhouse in the world stage, I mean, these are transformative things that this industry is capable of doing, but we've got to do it in an environment that is, I wouldn't even say like promoting this. It's just enabling market forces to work. Restrictive policies are gonna create situations where you see like what's happening in California. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, so I'll give you some examples where people have shut down the ability to get infrastructure built. I'll be selling gas in Pennsylvania in this January for a price of, call it $4. My mom in Boston will be paying the highest natural gas prices, not in the country, in the world. Just wrap your head around that. A place that is less than a few hundred miles away from the biggest gas field in the world, which is the Marcellus Shale, the Appalachian region where Tom and I operate, produces over 36 BCF a day of natural gas, a third of the country's natural gas, 6 million barrels a day equivalent, okay? And that place that's 300 miles away in Boston is going to be paying more for their natural gas than Japan, than the UK. It shows you the extreme negative consequences that can happen when pipeline infrastructure, which Appalachia is the poster child for pipeline cancellations. We've had 5 BCF a day of pipelines that have been blocked, canceled, and opposed that would allow us to bring this energy to lower energy bills, but those have been canceled. So, I mean, the market forces are screaming for more reliable energy, but political force has shut that down, and it's created some really terrible consequences.
You know, part of the problem is that free markets are moving so quickly that regulators can't keep up with it. And you see that in a lot of different places. You know, you see autonomous driving, drones, cryptocurrency, legal marijuana. Over and over, you have the markets that move so fast that regulators are left ill-equipped to deal with the reality of the business world. And that's absolutely true in power in the United States right now. Our regulations are tailored for a different era when we weren't growing. You know, we have to build things. We have to get back to being willing to build things. And unfortunately, if we don't, to answer your question, you're going to see a disconnect state to state. You're going to see some states that are willing to build things and some that won't. You know, you all probably don't follow the energy news as much as the three of us do, but Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania came out this week and said that he was frustrated with PJM, which is the largest regional grid in the country, and that Pennsylvania might pull out. I mean, that's a huge statement for Pennsylvania to make. And, you know, where I live in Texas, you can build things. You can get something permitted and have it in service within a matter of months, not decades. And you're going to see a disconnect. You're going to see some regions suffer and some regions prosper. And it doesn't need to be that way. These are not really complex problems. A middle schooler with a map could solve this in about an hour and a half if we would just get out of our way.
I mean, Tom, I'll give you an example on this PJM, because clearly we're seeing like leadership with Shapiro saying hey, this is an issue. We need to solve this. Okay. A couple months ago, we had the market screaming for more reliable energy. We have a capacity auction, which basically is the utilities will go and say, like for a power plant, what they'll pay you to reserve that power when they need it. That auction process translated in capacity payments being 9 times higher than historical. That is the market screaming for more reliable energy. And we had a governor, the same one, Governor Shapiro, you know what the reaction was? Well, we're going to put a cap on these capacity payments. That is saying, shh, to the market, shut up. We're not going to listen to you. So it's going to be a little bit painful right now. We need to let these market forces work, let these capacity auctions work, because right now, I'd say this whole thing, what's not being incentivized, what's not being valued, we've put in values on the green attribute, or on the clean attributes of our energy systems. Reliability is where we need to shift the focus and make sure we have the right incentives to make sure we get more reliable energy on the grid.
So I had an opportunity to sit down with some AI CEOs a couple months ago in San Francisco, and I'll give you just the 2 quick takeaways. One was I was shocked at how nebulously they were also talking about AI. So these are leaders of companies who are as deep into the space as you can get. The other was, and I just finished reading American Prometheus, the book about Oppenheimer. The other thing that sort of had me thinking is there are probably a handful of people, some of them might be sitting in this room or part of this academic institution, who truly understand sort of the transformative power of AI and what it's going to mean for us. And I would underscore what Tom and Toby said and share with you, it's not just an energy sector thing. I think it is a global sort of paradigm shift that's underway. And we are leaning into that space as a company. So I'll give you guys just some commercial tactical things that we're doing. And I'll do my best not to describe it as nebulously as I heard it at this dinner, but there's sort of the everyday AI, and then there's sort of the advanced AI that we're doing. I'd say in the advanced AI space, one of the unique things that BPX has as part of BP's portfolio is access to Palantir. So Palantir helps us sort of optimize the workflows to actually really deliver more efficient project workflow and outcomes. So we ran some pilot projects, one with the compression strategy, and the outcomes were tremendous in a very short period of time. I mean, there's no doubt that what we got back from Palantir was remarkably faster and better than what we would have stood up a team to try to do in maybe 6 months. The cool thing about Palantir is you can layer in any LLM into that system, right? They're sort of agnostic as to the language model you're going to apply. It's really just optimization, which is, as we've talked about a lot already today, is those efficiencies are just going to improve outcomes for our businesses. Sort of more in the everyday AI space, maybe more sophisticated, we've got a couple of agentic models now. So we're taking the data that we are putting through these systems, and we're making it so that our pumpers or our team members in the field can use an agent, just like Siri, agentic AI system to get information about that well. That agentic AI system, we call it PLX, is giving them pretty sophisticated, ongoing information about the well sites that they're visiting, what they may want to work on while they're there, or what work they may need to prioritize, and that just makes everything we do better. We like to sort of call it the CEO of the route for them. And then something I'm super proud of, it seems simple, a lot of folks in the room probably do this all the time, but we're tracking our Copilot userships. Everybody has a license. Some of our team members are chasing each other. We're up to 25,000 individual use cases a month. And for anybody who's used it, it can make anything from writing an email to a memo to even some pretty sophisticated engineering operations a lot faster, more efficient. So we're leaning into the space. We all are. I think it's a sector thing, but I think it's more than that too.
Now we have decades of experience on this stage here. Tell us, what are you most excited about in the next 3 years? Let's start with you, Tom.
I'm excited about young people coming into our business. And for those of you that are students, I really encourage you to look at the energy business. It's fantastic business to be in for a lot of reasons. One of which is we spend a lot of money. I mean, in terms of the amount of money we invest per person, you get exposure to big projects early on in your career. We can pay people really well because human resources are a low part of our cost structure, and we can challenge people, and you have the opportunity to manage big projects early in your career. And that'll take you lots of places in a career. I'm excited about young people. We hire a lot of young people. My favorite day is sitting through intern presentations at the end of the summer, and I do every year. They don't know what can't be done, and that's an exciting thing. They have tremendous energy and just the enthusiasm. And when you look at the crop of young people coming out of institutions like this today, you just have to say, boy, the world will be just fine. Let's just let them get to work and get out of their way. So I'm excited about young people coming into our business.
So,
Yeah, I'm excited about young people coming to our business. I'm excited about the natural gas opportunity. Toby really articulated it well. I'm excited for what I think is going to be a more honest rhetoric around energy. So, I mean, we talked about it a little bit throughout the course of this conversation, but I started my career doing wind and solar development, business development. And actually, one of the first projects I worked on was up in Modesto, California, where we built a concentrating solar thermal collector where Frito-Lay made sun chips from the sun. So those of you who are old enough, you probably remember this on the back of the bag. That was our solar thermal collector. We ended up running into some Endangered Species Act issues on this project, and it delayed the project significantly. Transition, fast forward a little bit, I ended up working in oil and gas, and one of the first things that I ended up working on was an endangered species issue in the Uinta Basin in Utah, the hookless cactus. And that was sort of when the light bulb went off for me, that these are sort of universal problems that we're really struggling to solve as a country. And I'm pretty excited that I think we're having a pretty honest conversation now about energy, what it means geopolitically, what it means for our companies, what it means for our country. And I think the outcomes are going to be positive. I'm really excited to see some of that take shape.
Yeah, I'm excited about the opportunities that have been bottled up for the past, call it 10 years, as we've prevented market forces from working. And now is the time for us to capture this. When you think about natural gas, I think a really good just understanding of what's happened in this country. We've seen natural gas demand grow 50%. Pipeline infrastructure to service that demand has only grown 25%. And storage infrastructure has only grown 10%. What does that mean? That means when you don't build enough pipelines, you're going to have places in the country that are going to be dislocated, where places like Boston are going to be paying more energy at the highest energy prices in the world, right next to the biggest gas field in the world. That's an opportunity for us to connect those markets. And the lack of lack of storage infrastructure is going to create massive volatility. And those volatilities are going to create other opportunities for us to close those gaps. So very opportunity-rich environment. And we're going to be focused on those and translating our energy independence into energy dominance. But I think the thing that gets me most excited in the future here is really going to be the change in culture, the opportunity we have to change the culture around energy. We've seen there's a lot of conversations that people have, like the energy transition, people feel very passionate about this. And unfortunately, people have taken energy and understand that energy means emissions and emissions are bad. And that means energy is bad. Not to us. Energy is life. Energy is freedom. Energy is technology. Energy is wealth. And I think now people are reevaluating the situation and getting a more holistic picture of the impacts of energy. And I think one of the greatest things that we learned with this energy transition, for nothing else, is that people care about something bigger than themselves. I think that is the most special thing about this energy transition. Because when I talk to people that are really passionate about energy in the transition, they're really not too deep on the climate. They really don't know too much about energy. So what is really driving them is that drive to make the world a better place. That is a fire that we need to keep lit. But we need to focus on a vision that I think is going to be more productive for humanity. And I think shifting a goal towards, focusing on eliminating energy poverty and eliminating poverty in general is going to be the thing that gets us most excited. Because right now, one of the terrible things that's happened in this world is in the last year, we've seen the number of people living without access to electricity has increased. That's never happened since we've been studying this. Okay, so it's not just high energy bills here, it's what's happening around the undeveloped world. They're feeling the full brunt of this. So I think we have a real opportunity to put a spotlight on poverty, and we know that providing access to energy is the fastest, most impactful way to bring people out of poverty. It's going to be a really awesome opportunity. And when you think about the fact that the challenges we faced on this globe the past few years, whether it's COVID or the Russia-Ukraine situation, what's happening in the Middle East, These are all terrible things. I think AI is not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. There's probably going to be some issues we need to deal with. We need more brain power solving these problems. And one thing that gets me excited is knowing that, as terrible as it is, 6 billion people in this world live in energy poverty. 6 billion people live in energy poverty. And we have a wrecking ball that can knock down that wall of poverty. And I bet you there's another Elon Musk behind that wall, or there's more people that we could bring into this. This is our opportunity. I think this is the big focus, and I think it's going to create even more opportunities, not just for our industry, but for all industries.
You know, Toby's point is really critical, and I think it's important for us, regardless of where you sit on the ideological spectrum, to understand that there's probably no better correlation than energy use per capita and GDP per capita. In fact, I recently took a graph going back to like 1000 AD on GDP per capita, which was flat up until the Industrial Revolution. So human productivity didn't change much over tens of thousands of years until the Industrial Revolution. And then it skyrockets up. If you take the graph of energy use per capita and you scale it, it overlays that graph exactly. So that poverty and lack of energy are one and the same. There's no better correlation than energy use per capita against GDP per capita. And we can argue whether that means that as people get wealthier, they use more energy, or as people have access to energy, they get wealthier. But we're not, you know what wealth means in the context of energy? It means infant mortality. It means women that don't die in childbirth. It means people that have the opportunity to go to school, people that have the opportunity to have a light bulb, clean water, people that have the opportunity to not die of respiratory infections, which are the #1 killer of children in the world because of indoor cooking. And these international organizations that are stopping development because they don't agree with the type of energy, it's monstrous. It's just monstrous. Because without energy, human progress comes to a halt. And the data on that is remarkable when you look at it.
Yeah, and to take that correlation between energy use and wealth, if we wanted to end poverty, and just to give some perspective on like what is the big challenge we think about, if we wanted to end poverty, and let's just say we set that as 50,000 GDP per capita, you know, China's like 11,000. When you look at how much energy it would take to create that much wealth, we need to average about 50 megawatt hours per person per year, okay? We need to triple the amount of energy that's produced and consumed in this world. Triple it, all of it. Natural gas, renewables, nuclear, hydro, all of it. We need to triple it. And we think about this a lot. I think other people need to have that perspective, is like, when we're picking like some of the above, it needs to be all of the above. And then we need to do our job as society in making sure we're deploying the best of the above solution. That's the only way we're going to protect the 60% of Americans that live in paycheck to paycheck. It's the only way we have a chance of pulling these 6 billion people that are living in energy poverty out in a time frame that actually, you know, is something we need to move with urgency.
Do you believe we will be able to triple energy production, say, in the next 20 years?
I mean, it's a remarkable challenge, and I think we need to do everything we can to say that at the end of the day, like, we did everything we could to make this world a better place for the people around us. You know, we're not playing just for the developed world. I mean, our day job is to make sure modern society runs, but our surplus that we create here, if we're fortunate enough to create a surplus, our surplus is the developing world's opportunity. And we need to keep that in mind. When we think about blocking a pipeline here, it's making energy prices more expensive. Look at what happened in Europe. What happened when we delivered energy security to Europe? Well, guess what? What happened to Asia that was counting on when LNG prices went to $50, when it should have been around 8 or 10? You know, the developing world was left in the cold there. Like, we need to make sure we protect the developed world so that the developing world can have a shot at getting access to affordable energy.
Well, they pivoted to coal.
And coal.
There's so much deep irony on that the Europeans, because they were natural gas starved, caused South Asia to pivot to coal. But that's another panel. we need all energy. I mean, nuclear is, if you can't get excited about nuclear, you're not paying attention. I mean, really excited for nuclear and what it's going to do to the world, but it's going to take a while. We need wind, we need solar, we need oil, we need natural gas, we need everything.
Thank you, guys. It was a great discussion, and we would like to open it up to questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Faisal. I come from Indonesia. So actually, I agree with Mr. Tom that discussion about energy must be involved in the discussion last week discussion of some of the country leaders. So what I get from the discussion is the domestic demand in US will increase a lot, and the production also will increase a lot. And I understand that US also has a very big role in investment in overseas. So with the condition that the policy will focus on the domestic energy demand in US, what do you think about the outlook of investment in energy from US to overseas?
Yeah, look, it's a world of energy. And I think companies like ours at some point, of course, BP is...
We're global. Yep.
Yes, we're global.
Yep.
Toby, you're not global yet, are you?
Well, I've got international exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah, global.
But it's bound to happen. I mean, American technology and our ability to unlock these resources really has to be deployed at scale globally.
Yeah, I would say what's happening in this country, I think we're going to look back the last few years and realize like we were at the helm when natural gas broke out from being a regionally constrained commodity that's connected with pipelines, now being a global commodity. I think it's incredibly exciting for us to think about that opportunity. And I'd say as far as resource development over our seas, if people understood how terrible these shale reservoirs are, I mean, the sidewalk outside has better reservoir properties than the shale that we're talking about. So to think that these opportunities, like the U.S. is blessed with shale and it's not going to work other places, it's very hard for me to think that these opportunities aren't going to be recreated. What is going to be incredibly difficult, though, is what Tom mentioned. Why shale worked here is because you had 1,000 wildcats out there trying, throwing things on the wall, failing. And those failures have translated to ultimately the right recipe, cracking the code. It's going to be very difficult for people to replicate that when they just have a major that's out there, one or two companies or a couple of national oil companies trying to figure this out. You need, the innovation and really the scrappy players that Tom mentioned to really crack the code in these areas, because it will be different.
Yeah, the shale revolution only happened in the United States. And why is that? Because we have some things here that we ought to really not take for granted. Rule of law, contract law, private property, and segregation of surface rights and mineral rights in many places. We have efficient capital markets. We have good regulations. We have a spirit of optimism and ingenuity that's second to none. Our founding fathers got some things right when they instituted the rule of law and the way it functions here. And it's something that is unique to the United States in many respects. It's, you look at so many industries that flourish here and the incubator that the United States is, and we should cherish that and not kill that with over-regulation. Free markets, when regulated with a light hand, will do remarkable things.
Our global CEO, Murray Auchincloss, I think, referenced BPX, and maybe our last quarterly call is there are global unconventionals experts. I'd like to think there's some near-term opportunities for us and for the companies that are represented here in the sector to really sort of export that technology understanding of shale reservoirs to unlock a lot of resource globally.
Next question. Yes, straight ahead.
Thank you so much for your time. My name is Jin Huang, and I am currently an undergrad business student, part of the Marshall Energy Business Club. Based on what I've learned, LNGs are very notorious for being a contributor to the greenhouse effect because of methane leaks. Do any of you plan on addressing this as companies? And if so, what steps have you taken so far?
Absolutely. You know, we cannot advocate for an energy solution like natural gas without addressing the biggest environmental concern about that energy system, which is methane emissions. This is something that, 4 years ago, I was sitting across from Secretary Granholm, and I told her, keep her focus on, keep the bullseye on methane emissions because we're going to knock it out of the park. People need to understand we have the technologies available to address these issues. For natural gas development, specifically, I'll tell you why it's important for us at EQT. And I'll just give you this example because we cannot let the emissions associated with making our product overshadow the emission reduction benefits when people use our product. And to give you perspective, EQT, our carbon footprint is around a few 100,000 tons. Now, we've addressed methane emissions and we're net zero on a scope 1 and 2 basis. 300,000 tons is the emissions associated with our production base. People are looking at that and they're saying, well, we need to shut down natural gas development because look at that carbon footprint. Well, understand, that carbon footprint is going to produce an amount of natural gas when put on the world stage to replace coal is going to have a carbon reduction benefit of over 150 million tons. So a 300,000 ton cost for 150 million ton benefit. This is the type of holistic perspective that we need to bring in there. And I'd say as much as we do policing ourselves, one thing you're seeing that we're doing to increase the transparency is these gas certification frameworks that are coming out. Europe has been very focused with their OGMP 2.0 program and putting these certifications in place. And what these certifications represent is third-party environmental auditors coming in and saying, what we're saying is happening, what we're doing is actually happening. So certifications are going to be really impactful. And people will say, well, that's good for what you're doing, but what about the things you don't know about on your locations? We're taking to the skies and we're doing aerial monitoring, and you're seeing some climate groups do this as well, although I think EDF just lost their methane emission satellite. But what we're doing in Appalachia, we have AMI, and Tom and I are in this together, where we're taking to the skies and we're flying the entire Appalachian Basin, over 30,000 square miles. To put that in perspective, we're monitoring an area the size of France. Okay, this is like a big deal. And we're seeing all the things that aren't directly on our locations and working to address those. And then the last thing I'd say is providing a holistic end-to-end carbon intensity reading. So for the time that the gas comes out of our well, through the pipelines, to these LNG facilities across the world, we'll have that emissions reporting stitched together, blockchain, so that people will have comfort that they are not only getting affordable and reliable energy, they're getting some of the cleanest energy in the world.
Yeah, it's a problem, and it's an engineering challenge, and we need to solve it. The three companies sitting up here, I think, are all three leading edge on this solution in terms of what we've each individually and collectively done. But it's a problem, and we should be transparent. We should be fully disclosing of the nature of the problem and the data in our effort to get better. But we have to use it as a reason to get better because we need that LNG, and not use the emission problem as a reason to stop LNG. We saw that happen with nuclear power, much to the chagrin of the world today. We had a Fukushima disaster, and that was a design flaw, and we used it as an excuse to shut down nuclear, and it was a bad decision. So fully acknowledge the methane problem, and we're doing a lot to fix it. It is fully fixable. We need to do it and be held accountable for fixing it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, this is where you're going to see, I think, some of the marriage between the technology, the AI we talked about, and things we're already doing. Toby mentioned this layered leak detection and repair program, right? So fixed wing aerial surveys, drone surveys, on-site surveys, all of that produces a lot of data, and we're getting a lot better at managing that data to start to translate that into predictive maintenance, right? So I mentioned that compression strategy earlier. The better we get, the more data we reconcile to deliver MIQ certification standards, which our company's done as well. The the better the predictive maintenance is going to get, and the less leaks we're going to have, and the more sophisticated the leak detection repair programs are going to get. And if we do our part, to your original question about the LNG sort of custody transfer, the gas that's getting on that ship is going to be the world's lowest methane intensity gas, bar none.
Yeah, we want that. We want that transparency. We want that spotlight on the environmental footprint of our product. You know why? Because our gas is half the emissions of Russian. It's 40 times better than what they're getting from Iran. So if people are concerned about the carbon footprint of the product that they're bringing in, then they should be using American energy and American LNG.
All right, I believe we have time for one more question. This gentleman straight ahead.
Hi guys, my name is Idris. First of all, thank you guys for coming here. A really good talk. You guys mentioned a lot, and everyone's been talking about the big problem between being in our own way and having a lot of regulatory problems that slow us down at every step. Most people expect that the leaders are going to be the ones to handle it. So how do you guys as leaders attempt to work with the politicians in whatever situation, and how do you guys actively take steps to make sure that we are on a good progress to deregulate the environments and making sure that we can make progress in the future?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, it's not necessarily about deregulation, but I think intelligent regulation. You know, Tom mentioned it earlier, but I think the key is engagement. The key is education. I think historically our sector wasn't great at that. We're getting a lot better. I joked earlier that Toby's one of my favorite CNBC reps because he's out there trying to tell the story about EQT, trying to explain what the sector is doing. And so I think, you know, Tom mentioned that the next administration might be an AOC administration. I mean, I think what we're doing is we're really just leading commercially, transparently, to work with state regulatory regimes, certainly the federal government, to kind of rethink, I think I mentioned earlier, sort of this paradigm shift that's underway. How can we, a NEPA analysis, National Environmental Policy Act, should not take a decade. After 10 years, whatever environmental analysis you have done is outdated. So I think there's a lot of kind of common ground there for us to improve these systems, to sort of enhance the dialogue. And I think I mentioned this earlier, I'm optimistic about where that's going to take us.
I'll tell you, if you think make no mistake about it, we're not advocating just for hydrocarbon-based infrastructure. We're advocating for all infrastructure. And if you think it's hard to get a pipeline built, try getting a transmission line built. If you think it's hard to get a 5-acre oil and gas location, try getting a 5,000-acre solar facility or wind farm permitted. So it doesn't matter what you're talking about. It's impossible. It takes way too long, and there's no way we can look at this and say we're going to win this race if we don't get our act together. So here's what we suggest. Let's get principled now in just advocating for all of the above energy solutions to make its way to the playing field. No more trying to pick the winners and losers. Let's let the market do that. But let's advocate for all the above energy solutions, and then let best of the above come through market forces. It's a very simple, like grounded principle that I think is going to be really important as we get through permit reform, which is going to be absolutely critical to the success of this country's future over the next 10 years.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think to your question, we have to make this a principle-based discussion and not advocating in our narrow self-interest. And if we're up here talking about energy, then we need to be talking about energy. Yeah. And we need to be just as outraged when the Keystone XL pipeline gets killed as we are when an offshore wind project gets killed and people have already invested. If we're really serious about emissions disclosure, then we ought to be seriously concerned about the EPA eliminating subpart W greenhouse gas emissions, because that is our broadest, most consistent way of reporting. And that will be a problem for us in the long run. And the partisan nature of these discussions just has to be broken down. I mean, this deal where our language and our position is defined by what side of the aisle you're on is just ridiculous. I mean, there's times when I just want to lock myself in a closet and say over and over, Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of Mexico. And we have to make it about principles and not about self-interest.
And the good news is this. Every politician that we've talked to, and it's certainly from my experience, I imagine, Tom, you'd have the same takeaway. Every politician I've met with they all want the same thing. They all want more affordable energy. They all want more reliable energy, and they all want cleaner energy. So we're starting with that. Let's get the principles, and
Yeah.
I'm optimistic that something transformative can happen.
Well said.
Well, I think it was a great discussion. We have 30 seconds left, and I would like to say, do you guys have any parting words?
No, just thank you. This is a great institution, and I love that you're getting engaged in energy. You will make the world better because of it.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I would just say, I hope people here are looking at this as an opportunity to do something more than just yourself. If you want to make an impact in this world, find a way to bring more energy into it. So thank you guys for having this conversation today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you again.